previous video, we learned how to add a database to our Spring Boot application. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to introduce the CURD repository in order to do CURD operation on top of the database. Let's see how to do that. Right. So before going to do that, I'm going to create the package, new package called DAO, that is a data access object package. Inside this package, I'm going to create the new interface. I'm going to select the interface. I'm going to call this interface actually customer DAO. So that's my interface, right? So the interface is created. So now this interface has to extend the other interface called CURD repository. You can see that the CURD repository actually takes two arguments, two generic type. One is actually the type of the class that we're going to deal with, and then the unique ID of the class. We'll discuss what is that. So obviously since our application is the customer management application, we have customer class with us. So I'm going to mention customer class. Now let me import the class. Okay, I imported the class. Now if you go and see inside the customer class, so what is the ID for this customer class, right? We are considering the customer ID is the unique value for what? Our customer records, right? So now we have to mention, so what is the type of the customer ID? So it is integer, right? So I would say my ID type is actually integer, right? So now we created this. After doing this one, you have to annotate this interface as actually repository, right? So once that is done, we have to do few modification in our customer class. So we have to convert this customer model class as the entity. So I have to do that. So you have to annotate it as actually entity. So make sure that the entity class from javax dot persistence API, JPA package. Then you have to mention in my entity at least one attribute should be the primary key, right? So the primary key can be represented using the ID attribute. Make sure that you are selecting everything from javax dot persistence API, right? So then I want this ID to be generated. If you look at our customer service class, we are kind of actually starting with what? A customer ID count as a 1. Then we are increasing the customer ID based on each and every insertion. But when we are trying to perform the database operation, obviously that customer ID should be generated implicitly, right? So I have to achieve that. So for that, you have to use the annotation called generated value. Inside the generated value, you have to pass a property called strategy equal to, then the strategy equal to auto. When you say auto, I want this particular customer ID should be generated automatically whenever I'm trying to perform the insertion, right? So we created the interface, we extended the CURD repository, then we added what is the type of the class that we are dealing with, then the ID type of the particular entity, right? So everything is done. Now what we have to do, let me actually introduce one more annotation. So if you go to your Spring Boot a main application, you have on top of the Spring Boot main application, you have to introduce one more annotation called enable JPA repository. Please make sure that you use this one, because we're going to use the JPA related, because we're going to perform the JPA related activity. You have to tell your Spring Boot that I want you to enable JPA repository things in order to perform the activity, right? So let me select that. So these are all the changes you have to do. So once everything is done, I'm simply going to run this application. Hold on, we had to actually do the logic changes. As of now, we are not doing any insertion, updation, deletion logic on the database. We will be doing it later. So I just want to make sure that all the configuration are fine. If the fine in the sense, your application should be started successfully without any hiccups. Let's see what is going to happen. Now you can see our application is started. That means whatever configuration we did so far, it's actually correct.